Last year I went to Ricketts Glen State Park in autumn and I photographed a number of waterfalls on the western side of the Falls Loop Trail. I'll leave a link somewhere to that one. This year I've returned with MrsFaceless to walk the same loop so we can take in the waterfalls on the eastern side, also known as the Glen Lee side. For those looking to do this trail, the closest access is via the car park at the Lake Rose trailhead. Start off down the Highland Trail and then either bear right after a fifth of a mile to the western side of the Falls Trail loop, or, like we did this time, continue along the Highland Trail for about 3/4 of a mile. Take a right to join up with the Falls Trail loop and you are on the Glen Lee side. At Water's Meet, at the bottom, bear right and head back up to the car park. Sticking to the top loop alone will be about a 3.2 mile hike. To add, there is a descent of around 860 feet, all of which has to be climbed up on the way back out. You can also park at the lower section and hike Falls Natural Trail for roughly 1.5 miles, including this southern section increases the distance to 7.2 miles with another 150 feet of up and down. So if you're going to do the entire 7+ miles, I would suggest you start from the bottom, then at least the last 3 miles or so are downhill. Off we set along the Highland Trail. It's 1.2 miles to Glen Lee side, however we took a shortcut further along, but by all means you can walk a little further than we did, which will give you one more waterfall, the 16-foot Onondaga. Ricketts Glen was named for members of the Ricketts family, who settled near Lake Ganoga in the mid-1850s and built a small hunting lodge on the shore of the lake. In 1913 the area was open to the public and operated as a private park until it changed to state control after the Ricketts family sold the land. It opened as a state park in 1943. It didn't take us long before I was at Midway Crevasse. MrsFaceless was dutifully filming. Just remember to watch your head as you walk through this gap. I'm just saying. Shortly thereafter, we reached the shortcut, a quick stop to take on some fluids, and off we went again. There are often a different number of waterfalls reported as being in the park. However, on the official trail map there are 21, and of these named waterfalls, most are said to have been given their titles by family member Robert Bruce Ricketts. More than a dozen of the waterfalls have Native American names, and several others bear the names of members or friends of the Ricketts family. We had our sights set on the 38-foot drop of F.L. Ricketts Falls, named for Frank L. Ricketts, who was Robert Bruce Ricketts' younger brother. The cloudy skies are working as a giant softbox, and with plenty of water, this is a great place to get our first shot. The light is quite flat, which is great for avoiding burnout in the highlights and on the waterfalls, but the shadows are really dark, and that's not something that the 5DSR is great at recovering from in post. So a simple case of bracketing exposures to ensure that we have all the necessary detail at an acceptable exposure. And this is what I got. Rather than change lenses to something wider, MrsFaceless took a 2-image pano for this shot just to get a little more of that rock wall in. She then tried a 2-image vertical, just to capture a bubble swirl. Probably needed a 2-row 4-image pano here, but still, a nice shot nonetheless. Ah yes, like and subscribe. Please do. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and helps the channel out. We're very grateful, so thank you. Next up was Huron Falls. I was seeing a helical flow to the stairs and the waterfall here, so I was trying to position myself accordingly. It's just a shame there's so much clutter from the downed trees, and we'll see more of that in the video next week too.
What I'm seeing here is symmetry between the path coming in at the middle and the waterfall coming to touch each other and go back out again. Very helical.
MrsFaceless was more central to the water flow. A tip here, sometimes it's not all about the big picture. There's much water flowing and there's little waterfalls and bubble swirls all around, so remember to look everywhere, including down at your feet. I had a shout, so wandered over to MrsFaceless, who was looking for some inspiration for her foreground interest and leading lines. So we got down low and looked at the various smaller water flows, and that's what she incorporated into her image. I took one final image of Huron Falls, looking back up the creek. It really is super pretty and super chaotic. I'm not sure if they ever clear the deadfall if it's not on the path. We wandered down and stopped at Ozone Falls. It would have been nice to get a shot from a little further down the creek, however there was just too much clutter in the way for my liking, plus the main falls were partially obscured by all of the rocks. I'm sure in better weather or less water there's a chance to move to the right or even get into the water for a better view. Once again, the left side of the falls is covered in deadfall. I did try to negotiate this but quickly gave up, and it was super slick and very loose underfoot. So instead, I perched myself up on this rock. And this is what I got. It wasn't long before MrsFaceless joined me, as you can see here.
So we're losing the triangle of despair, the light in the V by the bridge at the top, and we're making sure, we're hoping to get the tiny little water streams over there. Who knows?
Another point to note is that you can see her zooming in and checking her images to make sure they are sharp, as well as moving the image around for any issues or distractions. And as we are at the waterfall, making sure the water isn't blown out and has the right amount of silky. Continuing down the loop, we look back and, as I mentioned earlier, just a little too much clutter and obstruction to get a decent shot from here. I'd personally like a lot more of the main falls in view. With less water and maybe shot from that tree to the right would be a good angle. However, the water is pretty deep and fast flowing right now, and it's very slippery, so I'm not going to attempt to wade through it for a better angle. As we continued down, a beautiful double waterfall came into view at RB Ricketts Falls. Now, it would be nice to shoot from here just to get some of those hemlock trees in. I think they're hemlock, but anyway. There's a little too much overgrowth in the foreground, so we'll scout around and see what we can find for composition. MrsFaceless is just to the left of the bridge as you look upstream. There's some deadfall trees caught in the rocks, but this is all part of the continuing theme of embracing the chaos. It really is the rocks that she is looking at the foreground interest and to anchor the image. I went for a shot from the bridge, with some creative tripod positioning. Again, there's some deadfall trunks and branches in there. I'm not a big fan of chaos, but neither am I going to spend hours moving objects in or out of my shot. To help the composition, be flexible with your aspect ratios, as this can work wonders to remove distractions from the final image. A plan was in place in 1935 to convert Ricketts Glen to a national park. However, funding was sidetracked, and thanks to financial hardships of the Great Depression and World War II, the national park never came to fruition. Instead, at Watersmeet there is a plaque noting that this area is designated as a natural landmark. There are currently a little more than 50 sites whose names have been put forward as potential locations for new national parks. Ricketts Glen is one of them. Who knows if that will happen, or what detrimental effects an increase in tourists will bring, but I can honestly say it's already a lot better than some national parks I've been to, and if you get the chance, go. But remember, just leave it better than you found it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed travelling along with us today, a like and a subscribe would be much appreciated. Until next time.